Our presenters today are Wendy Tietz from Kent State University, myself from University of South Florida, and Tracy Miller Nobles from Austin Community College. Just a reminder that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box that you can see at the bottom of your screen, and we will make sure to answer your questions by the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy.
Hi, great, thank you.
This is Wendy. I'm going to talk about Zoom, if you don't mind, Tracy.
Oh, sorry.
And, okay. So we're going to be talking about Zoom today. Zoom is one of the most popular streaming platforms right now for video conferencing. Zoom itself is compatible with Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. When we are talking today, the best experience is going to be if you download the application the first time when you ask. You only have to install it once on a device. You can use it on your computer through the browser, but it doesn't have as many functions. Then there are extensions available for Chrome, Firefox, just make it a little bit easier to use. There is also an Outlook plugin. So those are all part of Zoom, and just be aware that they exist. So we're going to first talk about the Zoom free account. The Zoom free account, entirely free. You can have up to 100 people in your meeting. You can hold up to a 40-minute meeting with 3 or more people. And at peak times, one of the things they pull back on the free version of the Zoom is to remove the phone option for video, for audio. And sometimes they pull the high definition video and just give a standard definition video, which is happening across the world right now. I know YouTube, Amazon Prime, Netflix have all dropped down to standard definition. So I think that's just where we are as a society. But the free version of Zoom, you can do a lot. There is also a pro version of Zoom. Once you bump up to the pro version, there's a 24-hour limit on meetings. You can have up to 100 participants again. There are reports available, and we'll talk about some things you might want to report about. You have a gigabyte of cloud recording storage, so you can record to the cloud. And the pro version costs about $15 a month, which translates into $180 a year, and you can go month to month. So if you want it for a few months, you can do that. And most of what I talk about today is available on the free version, and I'll try to remember to say if it's not part of the free version, but most of it is available on the free version. Okay, we are going to be talking about office hours and class, because Zoom is appropriate for either one. Office hours are fairly easy because you can just open it up. Class, unless your class is under 40 minutes with the free version, probably not going to get you through that. So that's something to consider. And I'm going to show you in the demonstration portion today of how to set up a reoccurring meeting. So if you have office hours every Tuesday at 9 a.m., you can schedule a Zoom meeting for that time every Tuesday. If you have class every Monday, Wednesday at 10 a.m., you can set that up as well. So there are reoccurring options, just like you're used to in your calendar. Some notes, just non-technical notes. If you're using Zoom for office hours, make sure you know who you're talking to, because you don't want someone spoofing someone else. And so you have to be very careful there. Make sure you're alone with the student in the Zoom room if you're discussing anything confidential. And then highly recommend you don't record office hours, because there shouldn't be a need to, and you may be violating privacy if you do. And I know sometimes we have K-12 people on our webinars, so I just want to point out some things that are unique to K-12. Be careful of names and photos in Zoom. Probably don't record if you have participants with videos. In K-12, Zoom has it set up. If your school district has Zoom, your students can sign in without an account. So you need to check on, if you are K-12 educator, check with Zoom for other considerations, and also check with your school. So I just wanted to point that out because of the K-12 privacy restrictions. Certainly those of us in higher education need to be sensitive to recording students' faces and names as well. And so maybe when you have class, you don't use the video for participants because then you're not recording their face and their name. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to use Zoom, and we're going to kind of break it down into 3 parts. The first part is hosting a meeting, and a meeting is what you would use for class or for office hours. And so we'll talk about how you host that. Then we're going to talk about what the attendees see and what controls they have for the meeting, for your class or for your office hours. And then finally, we'll end up with a small section on webinars, attendees. That's what you're doing right now. If you're attending live, you are attending a webinar, which is another level of Zoom. So we'll go through meetings and then hit a little bit on webinars, and then we're going to open it back up to just general video conferencing things that we need to be cognizant of. And then we have some really cool tips for you too. So starting with meeting host, and this applies to Zoom. Other software has similar things, but this is Zoom. So when you first go into Zoom, when you set up an account to set up a new meeting, so you want to set up office hours or you want to set up a class, you go into meetings and you click schedule a new meeting. And then you're presented with a bunch of options. So I have 3 slides of options, and I'm going to talk about these options as we go. So the first one is topic, and that's where you'll put class, you'll put the topic of a meeting, business meeting, whatever it is. You can enter a description if you want or not, and then you can schedule the date and the time that you're going to have the meeting and your duration. The duration is only for planning purposes. You can schedule a meeting for an hour and you could have it for 6 hours if you had the pro version. So the duration doesn't impact when Zoom cuts you off. It's just for your attendees' planning purposes. And then you indicate what time zone you're in. And then before, when I told you about reoccurring meetings, like setting up ongoing office hours or ongoing class, down here is where you would select recurring meetings to be able to schedule it over and over, like every Wednesday. So continuing down with the options, so I have another slide of options. So registration. So this option here for registration, for class or office hours, you probably don't want to have students register. You probably just want to say, well, here's the link, here's where you go. Okay, but if you were instead hosting a meeting, maybe of your book club, or maybe a local accounting chapter meeting or something, you might want to require registration. So if you click required there, it'll give you an invitation that you can copy and paste out to attendees. Meeting ID is next. Probably going to always generate that automatically. The personal meeting ID gets into a little bit of security issues in that anyone that has your personal meeting ID can just drop in whenever you have a meeting. So probably not going to use that personal meeting ID until you get to a certain comfort level and understand that. Meeting password, you can put in a meeting password if you wish to have a meeting password. That's another way to safeguard it. I personally have not done that yet. I've not felt a need to, but you can if you wish. And then video, you can designate whether you want the host, which is you, or the participants to have video. And here I've turned it off in this webinar. Know that when you use video, it's consuming a lot more bandwidth. It takes more bandwidth for your participants, and it takes more bandwidth for you. It takes a lot more video file space as well. So there's perfectly valid reasons to have video. When my department has a meeting, we did it on Zoom, and we want the video so we can talk to each other and have those nonverbal cues. But if you're going to be recording, say, class, you probably want to turn off your participant video and maybe yours. And Zoom and the other providers are asking that people be mindful of their use of video right now because of the unprecedented demand on the internet from all of us using it all the time now. So consider that when you set it up. And then we get into audio options. So you can have a choice of telephone or computer audio. Now, It's best to use both if you can. In my experience of doing web conferencing over the last several years, telephone is generally the most reliable. The problem with using computer audio is if your Wi-Fi is not 100% stable and high speed, you could have your audio cutting in and out. But if you use the phone to call in, it's going to give you a consistent signal. Right now, all these webinars we've done, I have used the phone for every single one. I could probably get away with the headset, but the telephone is going to be the most reliable. Okay, so that's generally, if you just leave it both, then people can choose. Meeting options, if you want to click Enable Join Before Host, what that lets people do is they can join before you join. And this can be a security concern, because people can get on there and start doing things before you're there. So generally it's recommended that you don't do that. You can also mute participants before when they enter, which is really convenient, because how many of us have gone to a web conference and you hear people's car noises or whatever until they can get it muted themselves. So that's probably a good idea. You can enable a waiting room. What a waiting room does is it allows your participants when they join to be sitting in a waiting room until you admit them. If you have a smallish class, and by smallish I mean maybe under 30, you can probably do that. Depending on how many participants, if you expect 50, 70, a waiting room probably isn't realistic. But this is just a way, another way to control who comes in, because you only let those people in that you know. Authenticated users, only authenticated users can join. That sounds really attractive until you start thinking about what that means. That means that everyone that joins the Zoom has to have a Zoom account. They have to have confirmed their Zoom account, and they have to log in before they join your Zoom meeting. And so that can be problematic, especially with students. So probably not recommending that. Record the meeting automatically. You may or may not want to do that. I choose not to do that because usually I start the meetings before it officially starts. So then you have controls to record it. And then when you're done choosing those things, you would hit save. Okay, so once you have your meeting saved, you can find it in your account in Zoom, and you will have down towards the bottom, you will see a line now that says invite attendees. Okay, and there's a link right there for your attendees to join. So you can just copy that. There's also an invitation that you can send out. If you click on copy the invitation, it's going to give your attendees all the information they need. It's going to give them the URL to join, and it's going to give them the phone numbers if they choose to use the phone for the audio. So that's the information you need then to email out or send calendar invites or whatever you're going to do. And then when you're ready for the meeting, you would click on Start This Meeting, and the meeting starts. Okay, so once you click Start This Meeting, it's going to pop up and it's going to want to open this application. The very first time you do this, it wants to install the application, and I would recommend that you do install it because it's going to give you a better experience using the application. You can run it in the browser if you choose. It's just going to be a little bit different experience. But once you've installed it, you just click to open Zoom meetings, and then you're going to be into Zoom. And what you're going to see to start is this beginning screen. And this beginning screen is, it gives you a way, when I did this screenshot, I was connected via computer audio. If I wanted, I could switch. I can share my screen, and I can invite others from within my meeting too. So if I need to invite someone after I've already started, I have that ability. Okay, so let's say right now I want to share my screen. So maybe this is class, maybe, and I want to start sharing my screen. What am I doing? So down towards the bottom, and now this is assuming you're the meeting host, because we're doing it from the host standpoint, there's a share button. So you're going to click that share button, and then what you're going to have is it's going to pop up and it says, what do you want to share? Now, here you've got a choice of screen 1. I had 2 screens on my computer when I did this screenshot, so I'm going to choose screen 1. I could have chosen screen 2. I could have chosen a whiteboard, and then I would have had a whiteboard that we could work on together. I could have shown PowerPoint, just the different presentations I had open. I could have shown my email had I wanted to, or I had a Word document open, so I can choose anything. I generally share my screen because then they're going to see what I see on my screen. Sometimes if I only share PowerPoint, I'll say, and I'll bring up something like a little Excel sheet and I'll be like, can't you see it? And then I forgot that I've only shared the PowerPoint. Also, I want to point out something. You can also share computer sound. There's a little option down there to share computer sound. You would do that if you wanted to share an audio clip, or on a very rare occasion, it's not generally the best thing to do to share a video in a video streaming service, but if you wanted to share a video clip, you could share the video clip, but then you would also need to share the computer sound. And once you do that, know that the audio, you might have to fiddle with it because it might come louder. So if you're going to share video in a Zoom, know that that's going to really consume bandwidth, and it might be okay on your end, but your recipients are also going to have possibly some issues with you sharing videos. So if you can, stay away from sharing video, but if you are going to share video, maybe you have a real short one, you want to use it, remember that that computer sound is there. Normally you would not have them that on because you don't want your participants hearing every time you get an email, for example. Okay, so next up, this is my menu across the top. So back here, let's say I shared my screen, and then this is my menu across the top. I've got lots of things I can do. I've got the mute, start video, manage my participants, a new share, annotate, and some other options. So right now I'm going to go through some of those options. So you see on the left side there, there's a microphone and it says mute. I did these screenshots before because I can't show you my Zoom controls easily. So these are my screenshots from earlier. So when I did this earlier, I was using a microphone on my webcam. And if I wanted to change any of my audio options, I would click on the little downward arrow right next to the mute button. And that's going to allow me lots of different options. It's telling me that I'm using my webcam microphone. My speaker is my Realtek speakers on my computer. I can test that audio. Here I can switch to the phone. So if I change my mind, I join with computer audio. I decide I want to switch to phone audio, I can do that. And then there's some other audio settings. So all of that is accessed by the drop-down menu next to the microphone or phone icon. Next up are the video options. So here it's letting me pick my webcam as my video source. And then I have some video settings. And then you've probably heard about the virtual backgrounds in Zoom. And the virtual backgrounds are really fun because you can pick. And so when you click on virtual backgrounds, here's an example. And what you do is you can upload any photo. So that you would take any photo, which is a JPEG, a PNG file. There's a couple different kinds. But you can upload any photo. You just click on the add image, and then you browse to it on your computer, and then all of a sudden it shows that behind you. So I've uploaded some Hogwarts photos, I've uploaded some library photos, and this happens to be my ocean photo. So you can do a lot of cool things with that, and it also helps block out what's behind you in real life. So that's kind of fun, not necessary, but fun. You can also manage your participants. So you've got participants up available, and you can go next to each participant. This again is a screenshot, and you can hover over their name and it's going to give you more options. Like you can mute a participant, you can remove them if you need to. So you can do a lot of things with your participants by clicking on the participant. Then there's an option up towards the top, on the top, which is kind of fun if you're the host of a meeting. You can annotate. So when you annotate, you have a lot of different tools. You can type on this screen. You can draw on this screen. So if I were going to do this now, I would click on my annotate button, and then I can click on draw, and I can draw all different things. I could change my color, and I can do a lot of different things. I'm going to clear everything I just did. I'm going to clear all my drawings there. But you can draw on your screen. You can also, another fun one is to use the spotlight. And the spotlight says wherever you move your cursor, that little red ball follows. So that's kind of a fun thing. Let me go back here. Okay, let me get out of annotation here because things work differently when you're in annotation. Okay. Okay. So when you're, after you're done with annotation, you can then go, there we go, okay. There we go, okay, I'm back on control. Annotation can kind of take away your control so your keys don't work the same way immediately. But when you're done drawing, you can clear it all and it'll work just fine. Then next up is that more button at the end. So this is the more at the end. You've got a lot of different things. There is also a remote control option. Tend to stay away from that. What you're doing is you're either taking control of another person's computer or they're taking control of yours. So that from a security standpoint can be rather dangerous. But on the more button, if you click on that more button, you will have the ability to bring up the chat room. You can invite people. This under more is where you get to record on this computer or record to the cloud if you have a pro account. You can disable your participants from drawing on this screen, which is kind of nice. So you've got a lot of different options on that more screen to the far right. Note that if you're using a Mac or you're using a mobile device, these menus can be moved from the top to the bottom or to the side, depending on your setup, but you just kind of move your mouse around until it pops up because they're hidden, they float around. Okay, also in a meeting, you can do polls. So you can do a polling question. You could bring up a question, a multiple choice question, and say what you all think, and you can do a poll right there and share the results with your participants. Now, your polling questions, you can do it for interaction during your meeting, but if you have a free account, you're not going to be able to get a report of those responses. If you have a pro account, you can get a report of the responses. Okay, and then next to the share, you have more sharing options. Now, the first two things are how many participants can share at one time. It defaults to one participant can share at one time. You can have multiple participants share at the same time, but it takes up a lot of screen real estate, so they recommend dual monitors. Who can share? Now, this is real important. We're going to talk about Zoom bombing in a little bit. The answer here should be here because of some security considerations. And then you can individually let individuals share, but once you click on all participants can share, you have set up the ability for anyone to take over sharing and share anything they want in your meeting. So that's dangerous. So you'd be better off just keeping sharing to yourself and enabling it on a person-by-person basis. And then who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? Only the host. So that means, so one protection you can have if you say everyone can share, who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? Only the host. You, the host, can take away sharing from someone else. No one else can cut in. And we're going to talk about Zoom bombing, and that's what these are meant to help with. Okay, now, as a meeting attendee, what can you do? You're going to see a lot of the same controls. When you go in, you have similar, it's just a little bit different than the host. You can change your view of participant video thumbnails, and you also have this ability as the host. Up in your upper right corner, you can click on gallery view or follow speaker view or stacked view, I think it is. So that controls, if you want something that looks kind of like the Brady Bunch where you can see everyone in a grid, that is gallery view. So you can just toggle through at the top on how you want to do that. As a participant, you can select which camera you want to use, if any, and you can choose your virtual background just like we did before. You can also select how you're getting your audio. Here I did computer audio, but you can switch to phone audio. And then again, you can chat with other participants. If you're in a meeting as an attendee or a host, you can talk to all the other participants. You can see everyone in the meeting, and you have some emojis or symbols that you can send through the chat. Group chat, everybody can talk to everybody in a meeting. Okay, now, before I go any further, Tracy, do you have anything you want to add about meetings for Zoom, either as the host or the attendee?
Nope, you have been doing a great job, Wendy. I think you've covered everything that I would have brought up. Sounds good.
Okay, so now I want to talk quickly about the difference between meeting and a webinar. You can only host webinars in Zoom with a Pro plan plus a webinar add-on. So that runs about, the Pro plan itself is $15 a month. The webinar is $40 a month. Meetings, participants can see each other in chat. In webinars, participants cannot see or chat with each other, only with the host or the panelist. So that's the difference. And what I'm going to show right now, just briefly, as a webinar attendee, you can see this yourself, but as an attendee, you can change your audio. Your phone's a really good source of audio, but you can also use your computer. You also can chat or raise your hand, and that would be through the chat or raise hand at the bottom. And once you do that, if you raise your hand or bring up the chat, the host or panelist can ask you a question, and then you can respond. If the host or panelist respond to you, you will see that chat icon at the bottom turn orange. Keep in mind, they also may choose to answer verbally, in which case your icon will not turn orange. You can also click on the Q&A button. The Q&A button says, here, type your question here, and we're going to get to it at the end, is kind of where it's going. So you ask, where can I find the slides? So the host or panelist can answer verbally or type it in, and those are visible in the question and answer box. Also, as a webinar, polling is also there. Here's an example of a polling question, and you can also share that polling after it's all done. Just as a note, if you're doing polling either as a meeting or as a webinar, doesn't matter what, if you're sharing your screen, you can't get to the polling controls. So to administer a poll, if you're doing your class with a meeting, you have to stop sharing your screen, do the poll, and when you're done with the poll, then share your screen again. It's not too cumbersome, but just know that you can't do a poll while you're sharing your screen. Okay, and at this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to Tracy.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot, Wendy.
Oh, wait. Yeah, you're going to talk, yeah.
Yep. So
Go ahead.
I have learned some great additional hints for using Zoom, and I use Zoom for my online classes, and I also use it for office hours. So it's great to just pick up a couple more tips that you shared today. But before we move on to our question and answer session, we do want to talk about just general best practices for video conferences. So Wendy did an excellent job of going through and talking about all of the different settings that you can set the meeting up. So it's always great practice to make sure that you just double check the meeting settings so that they're set up exactly as you want. Do you want participants to be muted? Do you want them to have their video? Do you not want them to have your video? So just double check that all of that is set up like you want. Another thing is that when you get in, it's always a good idea just to go ahead and test your audio and your video as you join. I use Zoom all the time, and I still do this every time I get in, because sometimes things just don't work the way they did yesterday. And then, as Wendy shared, use a phone for audio or a USB connected headset if you don't have a phone option. And so important is to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. That just gets rid of all of the background noise that you might have and that you're not even aware of. It also decreases the amount of any kind of feedback we have. So it's so important, maybe the number one thing when we do video conferencing, to just make sure that everyone, including yourself when you're not speaking, mutes your microphone. Position your webcam properly. I remember that when Wendy, Jennifer, and I, when we first got started doing our webinars on the Accounting as Analytics website, that we were all playing around with our webcams to make sure that, you know, the background looked good if we didn't use a virtual background, and that we had the webcam so that it looked professional. And then always consider where you're joining your meetings at. Making sure that it's a quiet space in your house or somewhere else that you're at. So where do you need to go when you get to, if you need some help? So there's tons of help available for Zoom. Zoom offers over 30 live training sessions per week, and Zoom also has an online help center. And I'm going to pass it back over to Wendy. She's going to talk about Zoom bombing and some ways to prevent, first, what is Zoom bombing, and also some ways to prevent it.
Thanks, Tracy. So Zoom bombing, this has been in the news a lot lately, and Zoom bombing is when you're having, it's happened to teachers having class, elementary school teachers having class on Zoom. It's also happened to some technology video conferences, pretty famous people, where someone drops in to the webinar and then takes control of the video and shares, sadly, pornography or other inappropriate images. And it's really scary. When I was reading about the one that happened to a prominent technology group, they would disable the person, and then the person would just come back in as a different name, and it would happen again. They ended up having to end their event early because they could not keep the person out. So that led to a whole new set of protocols, what we recommend to avoid that. First of all, first thing you can do that really takes care of a lot of it is disabling the guest screen sharing. If you only let the host share their screen, that takes care of a bunch of it. You require the host to be present. So where we said, where you allow people to join before the host, probably not great idea. So require you to be there, the host to be there. Keep your personal ID meeting private. You have a personal ID number that you could share on social media and say, this is my personal ID, here, you can come visit me here, but that gives it away to hackers as well. You can use a password for meetings if you choose. I've not done that yet. I've been doing more of the guest screen sharing, disabling. You can also use the waiting room where you only let people in. So there's also some other things. So additional ways, don't share your meeting links on social media. Don't use that personal meeting ID. You get a, I don't know, 9 or 10 digit number that's yours. Don't use it. Use the random generator. Don't click on the personal, because you just, once people have that, they can drop in on you. Choose only host for screen sharing control during a meeting, or you can give control to a specific user, not just all users. Allow only signed in users to join a meeting. If you have a smaller group, use that waiting room. And if you have an unwanted participant, you can remove them. But what was happening to the tech group is that person just kept coming back in. So these are just some ideas to keep you out of trouble. I don't find it unduly concerning, as long as, if no one can share except me, I'm in great shape. And then I can share on a one-on-one basis to those users who I know in the meeting that have a reason to share. So now I'm going to give it back to Tracy.
Great, thanks, Wendy. So we've got just a couple more tips for you. The first one is just some different ways that you can see everyone on Zoom, either using the desktop app or the mobile app. So Zoom defaults to a setting where you only see the person that is speaking. And I often like to see everyone that's in the Zoom meeting with me. So in order to do that, you'll change your view to gallery view. And that's going to be in the top right corner of the screen. There's going to be an option for you to click on gallery view, and that will allow you to see all the participants displayed on a single page if the meeting has 49 or fewer people in it. If there's more, then you're going to clearly get more than one page, and you can just scroll through to see the different participants. Now, it's a little different on the mobile app. By default, the mobile app displays the active speaker view, and you're just going to swipe left from the active speaker view to display the gallery view. Because it's a little smaller screen that we're looking at, you can view up to 4 participants' thumbnails at a time, and then to view more participants, you just simply swipe left. So it gives you the option of seeing everybody who's participating in your Zoom call with you. Another super awesome and easy tip to use and to know about is that if you use the space bar will mute and unmute you. So as long as you have the Zoom screen activated, if you click the space bar, then it will mute or unmute you. So that's a really nice, easy trick to know about. One other thing that I like to know how to do is how to hide either non-video participants or how to hide myself if I don't want to have to look at myself. So for example, if you have participants who aren't using video, so they maybe just joined on their computer with no video, or they're on a phone line and of course they don't have any video, then you can hide their image, their icon. Usually it just comes up with a blank square. You can hide their icon by going into settings and then going to video and meetings and just selecting checking hide non-video participants. So that's a really nice way so that when you're in that gallery view, you're only seeing individuals who have their videos turned on. Now, my yoga class, my yoga studio that I always go to has been doing virtual yoga since we've started being in the shelter-in-place area. And so one of the things that I like to know how to do when I do my yoga is how to hide myself so that I don't have to watch myself doing yoga. And so if you're a participant and you don't want to see yourself, or even if you're a host and you maybe have another screen up and you don't want to see yourself, then you can always hide your own video. To be really aware of this, it doesn't hide your video from everyone else. You would have to stop the video in order to do that. But to hide the video so you don't see yourself, you do that by going to the upper right-hand corner of your video image. You click the 3 dots and then you click Hide Self View. And that's just a nice way so that you don't have to see yourself as a participant. So one of my faculty members here at ACC was using Zoom the other day, and he was asking if he could go into a Zoom session as a participant while he was managing the Zoom as a host. And so we talked about some ways that he could do that, and the benefit of doing that would be that he could see on a different computer exactly what his students were seeing. It would give him some more screen real estate so that he could see the questions or the chat area. And so the best way to do that would be to go into Zoom as a participant by using the incognito window in your web browser. You have to be very careful because you cannot log into your Zoom account twice. If you do, it will kick you out of one of those Zoom accounts. So you would join the Zoom session as a participant. Don't log in to your account. Join as a participant and then make up a name to attend so that you can see your screen. And then also, when you're in there, you want to make sure that you don't have the audio or your video or your microphone going, because that could create feedback on the computer that you're hosting from. So to summarize, we want to provide you with some video conferencing best practices. And those video conferencing best practices include, number one, mute yourself. Always remember that muting yourself and having other participants mute themselves creates a really nice webinar experience so that we don't get any of the background noise and feedback. We encourage you to have a planned agenda, so know what you're going to talk about, just like you would do if you're going to go into class in a traditional space. Know what you're going to cover, know what questions you're going to ask, make sure you know ahead of time. I really encourage, if you're new to this, that you practice beforehand with friends, family, or your colleague. I've been doing a lot of practice sessions with our colleagues, with my colleagues here at ACC, and it's been very helpful for them to practice before they do it with their students. Always have everything open you might need to share ahead of time. So when you're going to share your screen, if you're going to show a PowerPoint and an Excel file and maybe a Word document, you want to have all of that opened ahead of time, because that will just, you know, help with the kind of back and forth that you have to do when you're opening things. And then this is just my tip, because I record my sessions for my students who can't make it to our online class. And I have done it in the past where I have forgotten to hit the recording button. And so I post a big Post-it note reminder on my computer screen that says, record session, so that I'll remember that I need to record the session before we get started. So I think I'm gonna pass it over to Jennifer now. She's gonna wrap us up and also see if we have any questions in the question box. If you have questions, please type those questions into the Q&A area of your Zoom screen.
Thanks, Tracy. So before we get to the questions, just a reminder that if you'd like to find out about upcoming webinars or other things that we're publishing on our website, feel free to join us and follow our blog, where you can sign up here on our website at www.accountingisanalytics.com. And a couple of upcoming webinars. We have one tomorrow from 2 to 2:30 Eastern Time, talking about how to use Kahoot in your online class. This is a really fun thing that students enjoy. And then in about 2 weeks, on April 16th, from 3 to 3:30, we will be hosting another webinar on how to make lecture recordings on an iPad. And again, follow us on our website at accountingisanalytics.com. And with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. And I do see that there's a couple. Oh, I forgot our fun picture for the day. So this was probably us at the beginning of the semester, maybe actually a month ago. And this is us not even at the end of the school year. This is us right now, right? So love it. So thanks so much for attending. We have a couple of questions that have come in our Q&A window. The first question is that Christina has tried to add Zoom on her computer, her ACC computer, and it said the execute file was blocked because virus scan failed. So is that common for it to get blocked when you're trying to add Zoom?
I would contact your school. You could do two things. First of all, Zoom has a powerful knowledge base that you can contact, but also, Tracy, you're at ACC, so I would assume you have tech support on campus.
Yep, that's right. So I was just thinking that. So, you know, it could be that the ACC computer and many of our university laptops probably have quite rigorous virus screening or ability to download. I know that I had a laptop at one time from ACC that wouldn't let me download anything onto my computer. So I would check with your university or college's tech support because I'm sure it's a security setting.
And also remember that if you can't download it, you can still use it browser-based. It still does work, it's just not as fully functional. I would tend to think that that is a result of security settings from the school.
Awesome, thanks. We also have a question from Heather, and she is saying if a student wants to schedule time to meet regarding their grades and they don't have a video camera, how do you suggest she safely verify their identity?
That's a tough one. I'm not sure. I mean, if they email you from their email account, and it's their school email account, our school feels that, you know, if they have control of that email account, perhaps you can do that. And that's up to you. It's an individual decision, and you should also talk to your school about that. Sometimes schools require grade discussion go through your LMS. So again, that's probably a school privacy conversation.
Yeah, you could also ask for their student ID number. That would be something that you would have, and hopefully they also keep that private. That's another way that maybe you could potentially verify that the person that you're talking to is actually the person that they say they are. So that's maybe another idea that might work.
Awesome. We also just had a nice comment from Duke. He said he really enjoyed the webinar and felt like it had a lot of content packed in here. So thanks a lot, Duke. We also have a question that came in. Do you ask student permission to record?
I don't. When I record in Zoom, I'm not letting participants use their video. So I'm recording, and I tell them I'm recording, but I don't use the video. If you're going to record video, you're into kind of tenuous territory there. But if you're not using participant video, if no participants can share their video, then I think you're a lot safer. Now keep in mind, you don't want to be repeating students' names in this recording because you need to be respectful of people's privacy.
The other thing I was going to say, Wendy, was I also record, as I mentioned earlier, my class videos. And I always alert the students at the beginning that I'm going to be recording the session. And they also know ahead of time, so they certainly could reach out to me if they had any issues with that. You know, by far the students are very thankful that the recordings are there. The other thing that I do is I also upload my videos into a system where the video is unlisted so that it's not accessible by the public. So that's another way just to make sure that you are, you know, protecting the integrity of that video. I also feel really strongly about that because sometimes I work homework problems, you know, solutions to homework problems. And I don't want those solutions to homework problems just to be out on the internet. So I always keep all of my videos as unlisted so that it's just not generally available to the public.
Yeah, Tracy, that's a good point to do unlisted, but keep in mind that unlisted means that anybody that has that link can get it. So if we're talking about student privacy, I mean, I think unlisted is great for homework, but if we're talking about protecting someone's privacy, their face or their name, you really also need to consult your school because you don't want to do anything that violates your school policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great tip. Thanks, Wendy. I also see another question that came in. Any options to set it up such that one student video is off if they don't want it recorded? I think you showed that in options.
I'm sorry, repeat it. What about, you can just, you just disable all participants' video. Yeah.
And you can also, students can also make a decision about whether they want the video to be on or not. So, you know, if you have a small enough group and maybe you want people to, you know, like for my classes, what we tend to do is in the beginning to create some community engagement. I encourage I have classes that are 24 or smaller. So I encourage my students to come in with their video on if they would like to. And then we have some conversations, just some general conversations at that point in time. And, you know, I get to see babies and puppies and cats and all kinds of things like that. And then when we start the lecture time, then I have everybody shut off their video. But a student, if they did not want to show their video, they just would never start their video. So they can certainly decide that they don't want that to be included. And also, just to let you know, I don't start the recording until after we've shut our videos off.
Yes, and you as an instructor, if the student chooses not to share their video, keep in mind that their name is still there. So if you're this is not you, Tracy, but if you're recording this and you think you're okay because the student didn't share their video, their name is still on their black box. So I guess it's just, you need to cover yourself by talking to your school and finding out your school's policies, because this is a gray area in many schools.
Great point. Absolutely. Are there any other questions from the group?
I don't see any more. I think we're going to be done. So thank you all for joining us. And the recording will be on our website tomorrow. And we do check the website. We have more webinars coming up. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot.